Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of the To Be Read podcast. I'm joined by Michael Laron and Archer Caldwell, and my name is Patrick Stemp. Sorry for coming on a little bit late there. For those of you who are joining us live, we had some fun time with Google before we got going. I think each of us have been logged in as the podcast at various times to get this thing going, so we finally figured it out.
Thank you, Google.
Or rather, we didn't figure anything out. It just started working. So I don't think we actually learned anything here. But how you guys doing?
Pretty good. Glad to be on.
Frustrated. Spectacular.
Yeah, Google does some weird things. I don't know why it didn't work for you guys, and for some strange reason it worked for me just fine. No idea.
Canada's just better with Google right now, and stupid Americans like you don't have internet tonight.
Something did pop up for sure that they've changed something for sure. So, oh well. So how's your week in reading been?
Not bad. I can go first.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
So actually, considering that we talked about banning books, and I had referenced George Carlin in my blog post, I reread. I'm bringing it all. Everything's coming back. Rereading, banning words. I reread Napalm and Silly Putty. It's a Carlin book, and it's not anything that has a definitive arc or anything like that. It's fun to kind of go through. You can pick it up. You can read it on the out of order. You can read it all together. Just little snippets of his stand-up comedy and things of that nature. But then, in addition to that, I read a book called We the Animals by Justin Torres, and it would be a disservice to call it a short story or a novel for that matter. It's a series of vignettes that go through his life being raised by an alcoholic father and a battered mother with his two older brothers in just a rough part of New York. So he speaks eloquently. It's definitely not poetry, but it has a poetic vibe in how he talks about life as a youngster. And again, it's each chapter stands on its own. So you could read it out of order. It is chronological in the sense that he ages from one story to the other, but in no sense do you need to read the second story before you can understand the fifth story. Beautifully written. It actually it won some award. It's a national bestseller, but I thought it won a newcomer award. New York Times bestseller, LA Times bestseller. Highly recommend though. I actually had to read it for one of my literature classes, and I started it and then finished it this week just because it's a really quick read.
Okay, and you'll put that up on the website. So everyone can see it? Cool.
Absolutely.
Is that your reading for the week?
That's it.
Cool. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, I didn't have as good of a reading week this week as I did last week, but I'm still getting through Choose Yourself by James Altucher. Almost done with that, so I probably will finish that up this week. Still like it a lot, and I've also been reading some of his blog articles. Been subscribing to that, so it's good. It's good stuff. I like him a lot, and I look forward. Isn't the next book in the series the Choose Yourself stories?
Yeah, which I think is some I've read that one as well. I think it's sort of you'll recognize some of what you're reading if you've been reading his blog as well. Yeah. Yeah,
I'll probably try to get to that next. So that, and then I mentioned last week that I was reading some erotica just as just as research to see what makes it tick. I read a Lexi Maxwell book, which I read episode 1 of MILF, which basically it's about a like a soccer mom that has to become an escort to save her family. So I actually like it. It's actually really nicely written, and it's not what you think it will be. I think it's definitely got a really interesting story to it, and the characters are pretty cool, and definitely want to read more. So I read episode 1 of that, and eventually I'll probably read the rest of the series.
Cool. And she's pretty hardcore, right?
Yeah, she is. It's definitely the way she speaks on the self-publishing podcast is definitely what her books are like. So pretty funny.
I wouldn't necessarily call it hardcore. The scenes
No.
that the scenes that do what they're supposed to do for that genre are graphic.
Yeah.
Um, but if you were to remove outside of some of the more just in your face kind of stuff, if you were to remove those scenes, it's still a good story. And I think
Yeah.
that's what she's tried to craft as far as you want to be able to tell an intelligently written story that has characters that just happen to get naked.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, when I read this, I definitely didn't get the impression that this was just like crappy, somebody writing a story just to get someone off. I mean, it's an actual story, and it's actually really well told. And
No, that's good.
that's one thing that I would tell people if they're interested in reading, something like that. I would definitely recommend that they check out her work because it's totally not what I expected in a really good way.
Well, it's good.
So,
It's good to broaden your horizons and read other genres and stuff too. So that's good.
yeah, definitely. I always got to read something different. And then I haven't
So
started Wolf.
sorry if I was just going to say, does this mean you're going to become an erotica author now?
No, I don't think
No?
so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think I could do it. But I was just curious. Well, because I've been listening to a lot of the self-publishing roundtable, and so much of the interviews and authors that have been on there these last few weeks have been romance and erotica authors. So
Mm-hmm.
I figured I would see what everyone's writing and just kind of see what's out there.
Good.
And so before you go too far, I don't know if we've talked about them so much. Do you want to give a quick overview of what the self-publishing roundtable is?
Yeah, the Self-Publishing Roundtable is a podcast for indie authors, or by indie authors for indie authors, hosted by Carl Sinclair, Wade Finnegan, Trish McAllen, Kevin Michael. Help me out. Who's the other one? John. What's his last name?
John Ward.
John Ward. John Ward. Sorry, John. Sorry, John. Yeah, and it's basically they do interviews every week of indie authors who've reached self-publishing success. And every interview is something different and someone who has an interesting story to tell. And a lot of their interviews are disproportionately romance and erotica authors, and so they're the ones who are definitely making a lot of the money. So, not to plug that too much, but if anyone who watching likes a good podcast, that's definitely a good one to watch.
And don't feel too bad about forgetting that. It's not about forgetting the names. It's just about remembering all of them in a
There's
row.
just so many out here.
I've done the same thing. And John also runs a great community on Google Plus, the Writers Discussion Group.
Yep.
And that's a good group. So I think you were leading into something else that you read this week, or were you done?
No,
It sounded like you had something else.
Yeah, I was done. I was just going to say I haven't gotten to Wool yet, but that's next on my list.
Oh, okay, good one. You're going to read all 9 books?
I'm going to try.
We'll shift
as fast as I can, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So my week in reading, I finished James and Claudia Altucher's The Power of No. And the whole title is The Power of No, because one little word can bring health, abundance, and happiness. And so that's their newest release, and the first book I believe that they've written together. And I enjoyed it. It's got that same sort of conversational tone that James has both in his books and on his blog. The two of them kind of take turns throughout the book, so they make sure that you know who's speaking, or if it's the two of them together, whether they're telling an individual story about learning to say no, or just kind of speaking to the reader then as a team. So it's a lot of stories about how they learned to say no. And James's story, if you've read any of his books, he's been up, he's been down, he's been rich, he's been poor, and just learning to say no to the things in your life or the people that are try to drag you down instead of lift you up.
Yeah.
So that was a good read. Then I read Garrett Robinson's newest series that he started up. It's called Nightblade. Mm-hmm. And so Garrett Robinson has started writing this series. It's a weekly series that he's doing every Friday, I think, or Thursday or Friday. He's going to be releasing, I think for the foreseeable future, sort of the next sort of entry in this series. So it's a little bit hard to see where it's going, but I very, very much enjoyed the first sort of episode. It's like 5 or 6 chapters about a girl who living in a small village and wants to get out. And in the first episode, she sees an opportunity to get out and grabs it quickly, and kind of, I won't ruin it for you, but it's obviously going to be fantasy, magic, there's mages, there's, who knows. Too early to tell, but very well written, and I'm curious to see kind of where he takes this and how long he can run it for, because like I said, I'm pretty sure he himself doesn't see any end in sight.
So that's just a quick hour read, right?
So, oh yeah, it's like I said, five or six chapters. I think when I loaded it up on the e-reader, it said it would take about 30 minutes even.
Okay.
So I think he's selling them for like $1 a piece, like each week, and I think you can buy in on his website to get them every week. He's got a couple different options. I really enjoyed it, so he got me interested at least.
Good.
Finally, I read Rachel Aaron's 2K to 10K or 2,000 to 10,000, writing faster, writing better, and writing more of what you love. Have you guys read that one?
No, but I saw that you recommended me reading it.
Yeah, I did. I shot that to you on Goodreads. You're halfway through it?
Yeah, I never finished it, but I've read some of it.
Never finished it.
So you're good to 5,000 words now, then? Is that what it is?
No, I never finished it because I guess it just didn't keep my attention. But since you recommended it to me, I'll have to go back and reread it.
Yeah, it's another one that's a relatively quick read. I really liked it. I mean, we've seen stuff like this before, books on getting faster, getting better. I really liked it. It's a fast read. She really does, I think, have some good sort of tips and tricks in there. And she's honest about it, too. She says, this worked for me. It may not work for you. So the first bit of the book is about that, how to write faster. And then she also gets into her personal process for, first draft, edit, all that kind of stuff. And like everything else we read about, the craft, it's you take what you can out of it and ignore the rest and see what works for you. It's definitely one I think I'll come back to.
What are some of your takeaways that you'll be applying to your own writing? That you learn from it?
A lot of it, I think, for me personally, is the locking yourself away and maybe turning off the internet and getting rid of the distractions. That's a big one. And I think she said for her, she realized that she writes best when she's, for her, in the coffee shop. No internet, no kind of at-home distractions. And I'll have to play with this, but she, I think, also realized for herself that although she can average, it's 10,000 words in a day, so although she may average, say, 1,500 words an hour, the first hour she writes, she only hits 500. It's when she's been sitting down for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours in a stretch that she starts to hit that higher average because she gets into the flow, and I can see that happening.
I know this is a reading show, but
that's interesting.
When you're writing, what's the most you've ever written in a day?
Me?
Either one of you.
Yeah, I'm just getting started, so a couple thousand.
I've written 10, 15,000 words in a day.
Yeah. In how long? Like 16-hour day? Or?
Yeah, like an 8-hour day.
Okay.
I write pretty fast, so I can knock out, I mean, if I'm really going, I can knock out probably 2,000 words in 45 minutes, an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the most I think when I was cruising, it was 1,800 words an hour.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll have to check that one out again. I'll have to reread it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And like I said, I think it's one that I'll have to go back to and pull stuff out of as I go.
And is it framed that way to where you can kind of just, dog ear it or put a post-it note in there to, kind of revisit as it goes along? It doesn't have to be read chronologically?
Yeah, it's broken up into sections. So if
cool.
you could read the section on editing and then go back and just read the section on writing faster.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yep. So if that's it on reading, I guess it's time to talk about our dangerous topic.
Oh yeah.
Of banning books. So this could be interesting, and I think I was just going to throw this out there. I hope we don't offend anyone while we have this conversation, but it is a topic I think that can be touchy, and we want to talk about it openly. So, Archer, how do you feel about banning books? Ban all the books?
No book should be banned. I mean, I have two kids, 7 and 11, and so there are definitely themes that I feel that they personally may not be ready to be introduced to just yet. But that doesn't mean that the story shouldn't be told. That doesn't mean that there isn't an audience for anything. I mean, we talked about it just a minute ago. When, Michael, you write books about teddy bears, literally, and you're reading a story that is not that. If there's a spectrum of soft and cuddly and absolutely appropriate for children, and hard and not so cuddly, or cuddly in a different way, and absolutely not meant for children, that doesn't mean that neither one of those shouldn't be told. And yes, there are definitely audiences for these sort of things, but outright banning and saying that there is no need for that, in my mind, is asinine.
Yeah, and I think that banning, when you talk about banning, I think you have to approach it from a couple of different ways. There's the banning with censorship. So let's say, no one should be able to read Fahrenheit 451 at all, regardless of who you are. There's banning in schools, banning in churches. I mean, I think that there's different angles that you can approach it from, which
Sure.
Which also makes it tougher, I think, to discuss it, because I don't think anyone disagrees that dinosaur porn does not belong in schools. I mean, that I don't think anyone can disagree on that. But I think where the gray area happens as well, should kids read Huckleberry Finn, right? I was talking to my wife about this when we were eating lunch, and she mentioned that when she was in high school, the book that they read was like a sanitized version. So it had the it had the original text, but it just took out the N word, and it took out a few other words that Twain used that might be offensive to African Americans and people who are anti-slavery. So I don't know. I guess that's a gray area. What do you guys think? Would it be okay to give your kids a sanitized version of a classic book?
Just I don't know.
Throw it out there.
Like I think. First of all, I was going to say, I think I would be with Archer in the sense that, as a parent, you want to be the one making those decisions for your kids, right? Not the school or the government or the church. So as far as a sanitized version, while you were, you mentioned Huck Finn, but what I actually thought of when you were talking about that too was Blazing Saddles. I'm sure you've both seen Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
If you wanted to give your kids, and of course that's a movie, not a book, but if you wanted to give your kids a watered-down version of that movie, it'd be about 15 minutes long.
If that.
Right? Because, I mean, that's a movie that's specifically making fun of that kind of behavior, and you water it down, and you're taking the entire point out of the film. And so I think that would be the same for a lot of books. That watered down version is no longer the same story.
Yeah. Well, not only that, and I'll defer to you, Michael, for reasons that those watching are relatively obvious. But with Huck Finn, there's a certain vernacular that is used that helps describe the day in which it was written. And while I do not use that vernacular today for a couple of reasons, I don't live in Mississippi or Missouri. This is not the 1800s anymore, and I like to think of myself as a relatively kind and open-minded man. It's a possibility to have an educated conversation with my children. They have had conversations through school just because of February being, hey, let's pay attention to things that we wouldn't pay attention March through January, or just it adds an opportunity to have not debate, but a conversation that is kind and you can go through, and there are a handful of things that you have to talk about, some really, really disgusting things for your children to appreciate that life isn't as disgusting as it could be or once was. So would I think of a watered down version? No, and I'm probably a little liberal in that sense, to where, and this is what I was talking about in the blog post, and it's coming straight out of Carlin, is words. Words have been assigned and have been given weight unnecessarily. Thoughts are what are great. Thoughts are what are hurtful or passionate, and it's when you assign a word and give it gravity that all of a sudden it means something. And if you can disarm that and take that whole context and say that this was a story that was designed to tell a tale of a time long ago, the words that they used were the words of the day, and not necessarily give them uh, weight or worth, but say that let's talk about it, and watering that down just delays that conversation that when they're reading the story they're ready to have.
No, I agree. And I ask that just to be a devil's advocate. I mean,
Sure.
I don't think that you should sanitize any kind of a book, because when you do that, you have to keep in mind that the tide is changing on banning books. More and more people don't want to participate in that, and they're open-minded about what their children are reading. And I think that when you take a sanitized version of a book and you give it to a kid, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's they're sanitizing words, if they're sanitizing entire arcs of the plot, a character doesn't die, or they cut out the parts where there's gore, or there's things that are morally unacceptable. That puts that kid at a disadvantage. Because that kid's going to go to a college room and they're going to make a fool out of themselves when they say, "Oh, well."
Oh, that never happened in chapter 2. In chapter 2,
no, that didn't happen.
They went to the diner.
No, Huck and Jim, they were cuddling with teddy bears as they went down the Mississippi River.
There's a great example of that sort of watered down again. This is again not a book, but more when you relate things back to TV and movies, I think more people have seen them. I don't know if did you guys watch Friends?
Yeah.
Do you remember there was an episode where Phoebe discovers that her mom kind of cut off the ending of movies. Like, she's never seen the ending of a lot of these movies. I think Old Yeller was one of them, where her mom would always stop the movie before it got to the point where it got sad or horrifying or whatever. And so she realizes when she gets older, she's like, she hasn't really seen how any of these books, and those aren't because they would have been banned or anything, but there's that, like you said, you go to college and you feel like an idiot. You realize, like, wow, I actually haven't read this book, or I haven't seen this movie, or
wait a minute, I thought Old Yeller went to a farm where he could roam around for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and that's not to say that there's a place for hate speech. I mean, that's a different kind of but in the States, actually, I don't think hate speech is protected, because it's the whole, you can't scream fire in a crowded theater kind of thing.
Right.
But there are consequences for that, and if you're willing to be a foolish person, it's hard for me to do this and keep a PG-rated podcast. If you're foolish enough to make a certain statements, well, then you deserve the wrath, whether that's financial or boycotts or just hate mail back that you get, and sadly there's still probably an audience for that.
Well, and what it boils down to is if you don't like something, or something offends you, don't read it.
Right.
And same thing with children. I mean, I think that kids have to grow up in a society where it's okay to foster knowledge and an exchange of ideas. It may be something that offends them or disgusts them, but it forces them to make up their own opinions about the world, and that is why you can't ban books.
Don't you think that they would have realized? It amazes me that books are still banned today, because you think that after the first few failed attempts of banning books, that it would have occurred to them that by doing so they're just making them more interesting to people and probably helping them sell a lot more copies.
Are you talking in the world in general or in the Western world?
Well, I can't really speak to anything offshore. Like, I don't know about banned books in China, or but it seems probably here, and let's say in the UK, like when they try to ban a book, it just puts focus and interest on it and makes people more interested in it.
Yeah.
Which is like the opposite of what they're trying to do, right? They want people to just agree with them and say, yes, wizards are stupid. Ban Harry Potter. Harry Potter's evil. It just makes people.
Compass takes the wrong tone on religion, and you shouldn't read it. No, I mean, I live in the Carolinas, and I'm still in the Bible Belt, and so there's definitely areas that people don't want you to read that because it goes against what they're very, very passionate and strong beliefs are in, and they're entitled to that, and they're entitled to fight it, and there's an audience for the the bluster. But Yes, I agree with you absolutely, Patrick. That it is 2014, and by now you should realize that if you want to read dinosaur porn, then you know what, you're gonna do it.
Whatever it is, there's a
And it's
subculture
not
on the
going to make
internet
you
for
a
any.
pervert, you know.
Yeah,
No, it doesn't.
it's not going to turn you into something you weren't already.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the whole argument behind banning books is, well, if our kids read Harry Potter, then they're going to want to go to Hogwarts, you know. How many times have you heard that? Or, you know, if you read erotica, you know, you'll become a child molester or something. I mean, I've heard those kind of arguments, and
Oh, you always leap to the absolute worst.
slippery slope. Yeah, it's just not true.
Yeah, I mean it's a slippery vertical slope. I mean it's not even like, oh gosh, no, it's always you juxtapose what you want to ban against the absolute worst case scenario that could ever possibly come out of. Not only do you want to go to Hogwarts, because sure, heck, I want to go to Hogwarts. It looks pretty cool, man.
Sign me up.
But that doesn't mean I believe in the occult or witchcraft or things of that nature. It's a cleverly told story that at its heart helps children realize that there's more to them than being bullied. Or, I mean, my father died when I was 2, and so I have a sense of absence and loss, and with Harry's realization in the beginning, just kind of looking into the mirror and seeing the life that he could have had. You know, as a kid, I definitely, if there was a mirror, I would have thought back and lived in a life that was fantastic and magical and impossible. And that's you know, you circle back to that at the end of the story and live your life and yeah, you know what, you fly on a broom and you try and catch a ball and you do these other things that provide, you know, a world in which good stories are told. So you know, but you can't look at it that way because it's a story about witches, which is about Satan, which is just bad, and nope, you should never ever read that. Don't take it for what it could be. Take it for face value and judge the heck out of the book by that cover.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, you know, in looking up some of the books that have been banned in the past and even more recently.
Captain Underpants. I looked. No, seriously. There was the last.
Is it banned somewhere?
Well, no, it has been on the list for 2014, 2013, 2012 because it has inappropriate humor for the audience that it's targeting.
Isn't that that's like a comic in book form for kids, right?
Exactly. I think. Yeah, I mean it's you might as well, you know, put it on par with. I haven't read it, but I mean from what I was able to look at, Ren and Stimpy or The Simpsons, or you know, I mean it's I don't
Poop
think
and fart jokes, right?
Exactly. You know what? Totally. Yeah. But what? How on God's green earth that could be? You know. So what's the slippery slope there? If I read this book, that means I'm going to want to drop my drawers and fart a lot. You know what? I have a 7-year-old boy. He has never read that book. He does that anyway. We get home, pants come off, and he farts. That's why that book has been written, because that's the audience. Hey, man, who would read a story about a 7-year-old boy who takes off his pants and farts? Every 7-year-old boy would do that.
So what list is that on? Like, where is that banned?
It was. I don't know if it was banned, but it's one of the. They have petitioned for its banishment.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, when I was looking up just kind of books that have been banned in the past, I didn't really see anything. It seemed like most of them were this was banned and isn't anymore, and I didn't really see anything that's currently banned. You know, like Harry Potter, I think, has come off a lot of the lists, and most of the books we were looking at, like Fahrenheit 451 and, you know, Huck and Finn. What were some of the other ones? Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but they're all
Grapes of Wrath
in the past, right? They're not banned anymore. Yeah. Yep. But every once in a while, a little bit of crazy slips through. So
all the time. The world's not the same without a little bit of crazy.
Absolutely not. I guess we have some comments.
Go ahead. You're just checking the comments? Yep.
Yep, I'm just reloading just to make sure I didn't miss any.
And I'll
Okay.
mention, because we'll go to the comments, and then I think we're probably close to wrapping up. So I wanted to mention, before we do wrap up, next week our topic is going to be getting your kids to read, and we're going to be joined by our second guest, author Michelle Reed. And she's got a few books out, including a series called The Invisibles, book one of which is called Mothers, which I'm reading right now and going to try to finish that up so we can talk about it next week when we have her on the show. So we're excited about that.
Awesome. And she has a new book coming out, right?
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 books, I think, in the series, and she's written some other things as well. We'll put some links on the website.
Yeah, we can talk about that too.
We'll talk about it a lot next week. Yep.
Yep. And Michelle is in the comments. She says,
Yes, she
ban all
is.
books. I'm here. Smiley face. And she also says, harkening back to the earlier part of our conversation, SPRT, Self-Publishing Roundtable, rocks. Just so we're all clear, learn so much from them. And Ellen Stoll is here, says, love James Altucher. His blog is awesome. And she says that I'm usually not for banning books, although I was happy when Amazon banned the Pedophile's Guide to Love and Pleasure a few years back.
I have not heard of that one.
Probably because it's banned.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was that big thing, was it just last year, right, where all of the online retailers pulled a bunch of stuff. I think they pulled everything self-published,
Yeah.
Unless your name was Hugh Howey, maybe, just in bulk, and it took them a while to get it back on because of stuff like
Because of
that. But
Yeah.
then, I'll just throw this out there, but the title alone, while interesting, doesn't necessarily tell you what the book is about, right? It could be...
But does the fact that the title alone has a felony in it?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well,
you could have a book with the word murder in it. That's a felony.
No, I get it. No, I get it. No,
I think Lisa... I'm pretty sure Lisa posted a picture of a book.
The cheap suicide, or
the painless way to commit suicide, or something. I can't. Lisa, maybe you can remind us the title of the book in the comments. But so there's another one. Like, clearly, it's not a book about painlessly committing suicide. At least I hope not, Lisa. If it is, let us know. We're here for you. I don't think, but. Yeah, the title, obviously, if they pulled it, there's more to it than just the title of the book. But
yeah,
and that's a slippery slope too, right? Like, and Amazon has a business to run, and they get to make those decisions, and I'm sure they made the right one in a case like that. But
that goes back to my point of everyone is entitled to write the story that they think that they need to tell. However, there are consequences, and so if you're going to say something just asinine like that, well, then you are going to be boycotted. And as a practitioner, as a facilitator in a marketplace, then Amazon is going to make a tactical decision that is appropriate to say there's no way that I'm going to have that person boycott because just I have someone with an asinine title, even if that story is a love poem that just happens to have the world's worst title. You know what?
Well, yeah, that's just a bad marketing decision. I mean,
I'm relatively confident that's not the case.
Yeah, well, it's just a case of mixed signals. I mean, they put the book in the wrong place for the wrong audience, and I think Amazon in that case was right to remove it. And I think that author should find. I don't think that it should be banned, but I think that author should find his audience. And those people that don't want to read it, then they don't have to read it.
That's a bad audience to find.
It is, and I can tell you it's probably not on Amazon.com.
NAMBLA conventions or.
I know it's and you know what? I think it's easier. Again, we're back to Amazon is easy. They're a business. They get to decide what they will or won't sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They might decide that they don't like Toyota or. I mean, they sell everything, right? They can decide not to sell anything they want. So I think, and that's, I think, a little different than banning, where you've got, like, say, a church or a government or a school involved.
Right.
So that's should Amazon be doing what they're doing? Absolutely. They've got a business to run.
Well, on the flip side to that, Kobo or Nook or what are some of the other ones?
Barnes and Noble.
And the Apple Reader, they could make a conscious decision to say that they don't want any books that reference Amazon because it's their largest competitor, and then unintentional consequence of that is now they're banning geography books on South America.
Yeah. Some of them also won't sell or You mentioned Lexi Maxwell earlier, Michael. I think don't some of those vendors kind of shy away from the erotica too, right?
Yeah, Apple won't publish any book, or they won't publish any book in their main store that has any like naked bodies or the closest thing to a naked body on it. I think those get put in like a specific erotica section of the store.
Okay, almost like a different web page kind of thing.
Kinda, yeah. Well, because I mean, think about all the kids that
Yep.
are on the iTunes store all the time.
Sure.
They don't want
Absolutely.
kids coming across that kind of thing. So, and I can totally understand that. I mean, that makes
No, that's catering to your audience. That's not banning
exactly.
it, but that's providing the go back to the old video stores.
Hmm.
For those of you
Behind the
who,
beaded curtain.
yeah, yeah, kids, Google Blockbuster.
Yeah.
It was a real thing once.
And not that
Not
long
that
ago.
long ago. Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I
That's-
mean that's just providing um, sanctity and safety. So as a parent, you can feel comfortable that in the correct environment, your children are being exposed to the Harry Potters or whatever it is, without having to be exposed to Scary Potter.
Sure. I'm just taking one last. Oh, here we go. Lisa weighed in. She said, haha, the poor man's guide to an affordable, painless suicide. Stories by Schuler Benson. I was disappointed it didn't come with a noose. And she says, kidding. So, okay, yeah. So that's another weird title, but definitely not as inflammatory, I guess, as the other one.
Yeah, the pedophile's guide to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, so what are we coming up on here? About
About
35
half an
minutes? Yep.
hour. Yeah.
So any final thoughts on that before we say goodbye for a week?
No, I
No.
think there's just so much more to discuss. It's hard to really tackle it all in one session, I think.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
At some point in the future, for sure.
I ban this topic.
No more.
Okay.
Banished. Never again. Shut up.
I'm okay with that too. So once again, we'll next week we'll be joined by author Michelle Reed. We're looking forward to that, and we're going to be talking about getting your kids to read.
Absolutely. And the only other thing, just to kind of circle back, we
Yep.
did talk about the self-publishing roundtable. If it's something that you haven't been exposed to and are interested in it, they do their podcast live on Thursday nights, same time as ours. So 9 o'clock Thursday night. Check them out on YouTube.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, if you haven't, go to tbrpodcast.com. We've been doing blog posts for each one of the episodes before we go in. So the goal is to get them up the weekend before our podcast, and it's just a couple hundred words, both from all three of us. And next week it'll actually include, and anytime we have a guest, it'll include their words as well. But you stop by. There's an area for you to comment on what you'd like to have us talk about next. If there are things that you want to just say, you know what, you're wrong on your blog post, things of that nature. It's an area that you can kind of chime in and help guide the show as we've hit a decade or 10 shows,
Next
a decade
week.
of decadence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next week will be 10.
So just if it's something that you're interested in and you've had the time to comment on YouTube, take a look at the tbrpodcast.com as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can be found on iTunes as well, right?
Absolutely. 8 episodes right now because this one hasn't gone up.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll talk to you guys in a week.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night, everyone.
Talk to you later.